It's Talking on Tuesday with Ted in our ongoing survival series. Today, we're going to discuss survival kits. What should you always have with you on any hike, any time outdoors in a remote place? I think I mentioned last time that the two most common people who are rescued groups, people crossing the border illegally, and day hikers. All right? Neither are adequately prepared. I was invited to go on a hike this week with a hiker I'm not experienced with. So he doesn't know the mountain, what it's called. He knows where it is. I've never been there. I don't know where he's talking about. So I'm kind of in this foggy, what's going to happen. So we get to the trail head and we start out. And I've got my day pack / survival kit. And I said, "Are you going to take anything?" And he said, well, he had a bottle of water in his pocket. And that's good. At least he had water, but he had no tools, no anything. And we were very fortunate since we started the hike after 6 p.m. It is a full moon Monday, this past Monday. But we finished the hike at 8:45, which is a little dark. And an incident, cross-country hiking, bushwhacking, when rattlesnakes are most active, people could stumble, fall. You have to be prepared for an eventuality because it's going to happen. And it's going to happen when you're not ready for it. He was relying on me to have everything. Well, you can't do that. You've got to be individually prepared for everything yourself. So, the most important item in your survival kit is what's between your two ears. All right? Your experience, your knowledge, your intelligence, your reaction to things that go wrong. How do you react? Do you freak out? Some people are prone to panic, and that's not a healthy situation in the wilderness. All right, survival kit items, and we're just going to go through this kit. Now, it is important to also remember that it's not just what's in the kit. Look at your feet. All right? Could you walk 20 miles right now with your footwear? If the answer is not yes, you're putting yourself into a difficult situation, potentially. All right? Clothing. I took long sleeves on our hike this past Monday. It's going to be late. It's bushwhacking, and you just have to be ready for the worst possible situation. Brush, so long sleeves. Being at night, again, long sleeves. We started out at 5,000 feet, finished a little over 6,000 feet before we got back. So, durable pants, hiking boots, etc. So it's not just what's in your kit, what's on your back or on your belt, but what your entire wardrobe is. Okay, starting with the hat. Remember we talked about hats. Some kind of a hat with a brim on it all the way around is even better. Now, when we started the hike, I got to mention this one other thing. I was given a gift. All right, it's a big, hunting knife. When I was a kid, we would call this a bayonet. All right. And it was a nice gesture. I stuffed it into my fanny pack, which is my survival kit. It barely fit in there. And that's nice and so forth. However, your equipment in this kind of a situation, today's backpacking, hiking, survival, the equipment, lightweight, durable, compact. Okay? Now, you're not a pack animal, so you don't want to be hauling around a ton of stuff. All right, you're a person, and you want to travel light. Okay. All right. Now, some people, this was another gift that I was given. People give me stuff. I don't know why they do, because most of the time I just re-gift it. But you could just buy a survival kit. Okay. The problem with these things, and I just put a spare pair of glasses in my survival kit just this morning because I have to be able to see, and I need a backup pair. I have them in all my vehicles. I get them at the dollar store. They're all over the house. in case I step on them, which I do, and so forth. But you've got to have backup. And it tells you all that's in it. It's in a sardine can. The problem, you don't know why the things are in there or what to do with them. So I discourage you. Now, I had this in my little camera case, which I don't use anymore, but I did take it on this past hike because it has my GPS unit in it, and I wanted to be able to figure out where we were, because James didn't know where we were going, which means I didn't know, but now I know. Okay, so you get a little one like that, and if nothing else, you have something. Okay, if you lose this or you get separated from it, you have something. You've got to have something, which is still not important as what's between your two ears, right? All right, so fanny pack is what I have. This is also my day pack. And when I go on a big backpack trip, and I just throw this whole thing in my backpack. So if I'm going to take a little excursion from camp, let's say, on a half-hour stroll, then I take this with me. I always have this with me. Okay? Show you easier this way. All right, you've always got water, and of course on the other side I could put in 2 containers, which as I did on this past hike. Normally I just have some trash bags in there because you're going to find trash on the way. You always want to leave it better than you found it. Water. I prefer wet wipes to toilet paper. Much more effective out there where that's all you have. All right. Let's go into the big compartment. All right, so in the large compartment, I've got umbrella, compact umbrella. Now, I don't always have that in there on every trip, but I've got space in here for occasionally extra things like this, like that big bayonet that I was given. Snacks, I don't always have the snacks in there. Cord, we talked about cordage before. You've always got to be able to rig a shelter, tie something up, or tie something together that's falling apart. I often use that in a bare area where I'm hanging my pack up in a tree so that it's not a temptation for the bears. Space blanket. Now these are generally pretty fragile, and you've got to, if you're going to use it, you're going to have to replace it. So just bear in mind, which again happened with this presentation, going through the kit to make sure that the stuff in it is in good shape. For example, some of the first aid material or the cigarette lighter that I had was dry. So this morning I had to get another one. You can't just have this out of sight, out of mind, and never look at it. You've got to look at it occasionally to make sure that it is still usable. Ace bandage. Some first aid material, and again, what you put in yours as far as the specific items, you know, is up to you. If you are on medication, you need to make sure that you take that or have that. So I just got some Neosporin, some Band-Aids in here, some other Band-Aids, larger ones, some other wrap-up material, tape as well. Let me go over here to the belt part. Some of these things you want faster access to, like a knife. Okay. Now I prefer a Leatherman or a multi-purpose tool because you're going to need possibly a saw, pliers, tweezers, those kind of things instead of simply a knife. And I'm going to leave this out because we're going to need it, aren't we? Okay. All right. And a whistle. Now I had a group going through some of those activities or questionnaires that we had, the scenarios last time. And we're in the middle of the Santan Mountains, just in a dry wash, drove in there, and we're just out there in the desert where you could really get yourself stuck. And a bullet went through the group. Somebody was just out there shooting around. And all I heard was start yelling. So I took out the whistle, blasted it 3 times. 3 is an international recognized symbol of distress. So you're going to do a lot more good and be much more effective with a whistle than with yelling and screaming or waving your arms or whatever. Okay? So, some first aid items. Band-aids, common thing. I've got Neosupport in here, some kind of antiseptic. Tape, other gauze, bandage to put things together, patch things up. Again, it's temporary, it's emergency, just to get by. You want to be out of there, back home, civilization, within 3 days. Cord, you always need to be able to tie something up, put something together. I'll often use it to string up a food bag in bear country so that it's less of a temptation. Sometimes I'll have larger things in there, like a small compact umbrella. I don't always put that, but I have room for this, for that big knife that I was given, snacks, food, etc. I prefer wet wipes over toilet paper when you're out there. If you get chafed, covering a lot of distance, you don't want that. That's going to not be a serious thing, but it's going to become a serious thing if you don't take care of personal, common hygiene. I decided this morning I'd start having a pair of spare glasses in there. If I can't see what I'm doing, it's going to be a real problem. I mentioned in our little scenario a compass. This one has a magnifying glass, so you could start a fire with that. We're going to start a fire in a minute. Signal mirror. This is the one that has a little sight so you can aim and actually try to attract the attention of where you're pointing with a little more precision. All right, what else? And fire. Okay? Now you've always got to be able to start a fire. And I mentioned too the ace bandage and the space blanket. Okay? So, I don't care how you start a fire, but you got to be able to do it. Okay? Cigarette lighter, which I found this morning was dried out. You've got to go through this every once in a while and make sure that you can always start a fire. Like when you go spelunking, you've got to have 3 sources of light. You should have multiple tools to start a fire. And again, the range of visibility with starting a fire or having a fire going is incredible. So it's going to be one of your key ways to attract attention and get rescued, which is what the whole point is. Oh, did I mention toothpaste, floss, those kind of things are also good to have on hand. Again, it's not just a survival kit, it's my day pack, and for multiple days also those kind of tools. A poncho for shelter, emergency rain gear. All right, in the fire kit, besides the lighter, all right, candle stubs. You want to be able to sustain the fire. In our conditions out here now, very dry, pretty easy to start a fire. Anybody could start a fire right now. And of course, if you're starting a signal fire, you don't want to catch the world on fire. You may remember the Rodeo Chetasky fire. Part of that was started with a signal fire. Okay? So you don't need to do that. You can attract plenty of attention with a small fire. Now, you've got to watch the wind, etc. Okay, so of course you have matches. That's another source. And then you have a flint and steel. So I've got the matches with a striker, waterproof matches in a waterproof container. Okay? Now, I've got, in addition to a large metal match, a welder's striker. Okay? So if something happens to that, I lose it, you've got another backup system. And basically you're taking the steel, a knife, and you're making a spark with the welder's striker. Okay? Now that's a pretty little spark. We want a big spark. Remember Tim the Tool Man from the Edible Landscapes? More power. Okay? Okay, Danielle has a fire extinguisher on hand. I've started only several fires in a library setting. It's pretty exciting, so we're going to start a fire now. She's covering her head. She has a fire extinguisher over there. All right, so you get your materials ready. You don't, get your little flame going and then get your candle together and your grass and your other stuff, to go. You get it all ready. Now, again, anybody can do this in here. You want to be able to do this when you're shivering, you're drenched, and you have 20-mile-an-hour wind. All right, that's when you can really start a fire. All right, so now we're going to take this metal match, okay, and I'm going to take it apart here, okay, and it flips around like that, okay. So now this does a much better job than the little knife and flint, but again, you've got to have backup. Are you ready? Okay, we're going to shift the cameras now to the other. Here we go. All right. So again, it's just you're going to make this nice spark, and it's going to catch something. Another alternative is steel wool, and you get a 9-volt battery, and you stick it into the steel wool, and the 2 posts will ignite the steel wool. Same deal here. Okay, so you get that fire going, you add your grass, you've got your candle stub, and it is all keeping you warm and signaling. Okay? So, now, I've hiked in the wilderness solo many times. The person who invited me on this hike said to me at the top of the rock that was the goal, I would not have done this by myself. Okay? And I understand that. A lot of people are not going to do that solo, like I've done since 1976 of December. All right? However, it could happen. You could get separated. You could get lost. All right? So if you can start a fire and you're out there in the wilderness and you have a fire, it's not just a fire. It is a friend, and it will comfort, give you security, as well as providing signaling, warmth. It's so important, critical, that you be able to start a fire. Now I have one quick survival kit story. I'm going to go backpacking in Havasupai with my elderly parents. I mean, they were 40 at the time, so of course they were elderly. This is probably about 100 years ago. Okay, so they're in their 40s, and my wife and I were younger, 20s. And so, what are we going to take? What kind of pack is Mom going to wear? Never been backpacking before in her life. Dad, very limited. So I'm getting all my things just like this into my survival kit, and I'm trying to think, to brainstorm. What else should I put? What else should I put? What else should I include? I got it. Sandpaper. I had never before or since put sandpaper in a survival kit, but I got it in there this time. Dad's a mechanic. The car breaks down on the way. You're driving a Ford LTD through the higher elevation part, and it goes glunk like this. Dad's worked on jet engines. He's built hot rods, whatever. He takes it in stride. He takes the wheel off. Oh, this is not good. The wheel bearing had seized up. So he sticks out his thumb. He gets a rather wild ride back to Seligman. Mechanic has a wheel bearing. Brings Dad back. It will not go onto the axle. When the bearing seized up, some of the metal fused onto the axle. The mechanic looked at my dad and he said, "Do you have any sandpaper?" Who knew? Okay. You don't always know what you're going to need. Okay. So, that's my story for today. Library Land's full of stories, and we'll continue our survival discussion with some of the most significant hazards you will face, like rattlesnakes. Okay, see you next time.